Congratulations, you finally found a Hero 13 review video from somebody who actually purchased it with their own money. So stick around and let's do an honest and unbiased review of the new GoPro Hero 13. Having invented the action camera market and dominated it for many years, there is no question that over recent years GoPro has lost their way, giving up significant market share to their two main competitors, Insta360 and DJI. So many GoPro loyalists are of course hoping that the new GoPro 13 is the camera that gets them back on track again. Now this is going to be one of several videos I'm going to be posting about the GoPro Hero 13. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that alert button where you'll see a lot more similar videos coming along, including comparison tests against the likes of the Insta360 Ace Pro and of course the new DJI Action 5 when it is released later this month. And we will be digging into detail into a lot of the features of the GoPro Hero 13. And alongside the Hero 13, GoPro also announced the new Tiny Hero. I have mine on order, I'm expecting it later this month, so look out for some review videos and comparison reviews of that also. So there's a lot to cover here, so as usual I'll place the chapters up here and on the video timeline. But very important to mention before we get started, this video is not sponsored, paid for, or influenced in any way. I purchased my GoPro Hero 13 and all of my equipment with my own money, and the opinions are entirely my own. If you enjoy the video, please remember to give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel for a lot more similar content. So let's get on with it. So when we talk about what's new with the Hero 13, obviously the main comparison is to the predecessor, the Hero 12. But before we get into what's new with the Hero 13, I think we need to take a moment to talk about what is not new. And when it comes to the key components that drive the power and capabilities of this camera, being the sensor and the processor, in that regard, nothing has changed compared to the Hero 12. In fact, nothing has changed compared to the Hero 11, where you'll find also the same sensor and the same processor. You'll even find the same processor on the Hero 10. And if you do a side-by-side spec comparison, which for some odd reason GoPro allows you to do directly on their website, it reveals the embarrassing fact that all of the performance specifications on the 13 are pretty much identical to what you had with the 12. All the video resolutions, still resolutions, bit rates, frame rates, all of the main specifications that will be used by the vast majority of users are identical. In fact, the only performance specifications that have changed are the addition of HLG for better HDR performance and the new burst slow-mo modes. But again, because we're dealing with the same sensor and the same processor, I have to assume that these features could easily have been added to the Hero 12 by way of a firmware update. Now there are a couple of internal changes to the 13 worth mentioning. They have upgraded the Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi 6 for faster transfer speeds. They've updated Bluetooth to Bluetooth 5.3 for more robust connections. And they've added back GPS to the 13, but frankly this was a correction of a mistake by removing it from the 12 in the first place. Now, one final internal change that I want to talk about here is the batteries. So basically they have changed the form factor of the battery and upped the capacity from 1720 to 1900 milliamp hours. Now the claim is that now this gives an incredible battery life of up to 2.5 hours, but if you look at the details of the Hero 12, you'll see it also had a battery life of 2.5 hours. So I have to assume that they needed to increase the capacity of the battery because otherwise you would have lower battery life on the 13 than on the 12. Now don't get me wrong, 2.5 hours, even 2 hours is a lot of battery life. So personally, I would have preferred that they left the battery alone, and that way all the old batteries and chargers that I've accumulated over the years would still work on my new Hero 13. And while we're on the subject of batteries, instead of spending the past year adding around 10% to the capacity of the battery, I would have much preferred that they had invested that research and development time in finally giving us fast charging on a GoPro. The new battery takes between 2 and 3 hours to fully charge up. When you compare that with the competitors, the Insta360 Ace Pro battery can be charged in less than an hour, and the DJI Action 4 battery can be charged from 0 to 80% in as little as 18 minutes. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the exterior changes on the Hero 13. Now, the first thing to mention is there is a new magnetic door and power adapter that allows you to plug in the camera and keep it waterproof while plugged in. And one really positive thing about this new accessory is it seems to be compatible with everything as far back as the Hero 9. If we turn our attention to the base of the camera, yes, GoPro has finally given us a magnetic quick release mount. Now, yes, they're very late to the game and it's basically a copycat solution, but let's give credit where credit's due. And I also will say that this is probably the best implementation that I've seen so far. If you compare it with the Insta360 Ace Pro as an example, here you have only a magnetic mount available on the Ace Pro. On the GoPro, you have all three. You have the magnetic mount, you have the fold-out fingers, and you have a 1/4" 20 mount. So you have all options here in a nice compact form factor that folds away into the base of the camera. Now, I do have one complaint regarding the new quick release mount, and that is with this camera having a price of $400, I kind of would expect to get at least one of those quick release mounts included. But instead, I have to pay another $25 to get one. And of course, the biggest change that most people are talking about when it comes to the Hero 13 is the introduction of a series of GoPro branded lenses and ND filters specifically designed for the Hero 13. And while I agree that this definitely opens up some really creative possibilities for creators, when I listen to all the hype about this, it's almost as if everybody has forgotten that there are already a plethora of filters and lenses out there for GoPros going back several generations. There are wide-angle lenses, macro lenses, anamorphic lenses, ND filters, and so on and so on. Now, the Hero 13 does have a cool auto recognition feature which will certainly add a level of convenience for many users, but let's not pretend that these new lenses are going to give you any capabilities that you didn't already have with earlier generations. And one final thing on this that I find particularly aggravating is that they have constructed these new lenses in a way that they will not physically fit on earlier generation GoPros. Okay, time to do some side-by-side comparison testing. Now, for today's video, I'm just going to keep it very basic. I do plan on doing some more extensive side-by-side comparisons against DJI and Insta360, but for today, we're just going to keep it very simple and just go over some of the basics. Okay, so for our first test, I have an indoor studio type environment. I have the GoPro 13 on my left. On my right, I have, let's just say, a mystery camera, but let's just say it's a camera that I expect the GoPro 13 to outperform. So in this studio type environment, I have bright lighting on the subject, relatively low lighting in the background. So what we're looking for, of course, is good definition and exposure on the subject, and with the background being relatively low light, I would expect to see a little bit of noise in the background. So obviously that's something we should look for. But overall, what do you think? Is the GoPro 13 doing a better job than the mystery camera in this particular environment? Okay, so for our second test, obviously we've moved outside. It's fairly bright right now, so obviously what we're looking for again is good exposure on the subject and no blown out highlights in the background, hopefully. I have both cameras set to 16:9, and we're going to crop the center and put these side by side. I have them both set to their maximum resolutions, and I did enable HDR on the GoPro 13 in order to get the best image quality possible. Also, because I have both cameras mounted on a tripod, I have disabled all form of stabilization in order to optimize the image quality. So again, what do you think? Is the GoPro 13 outperforming our mystery camera in this test? Okay, let's do some walking and talking. Now, because I am on the move, I have now enabled the stabilization on both cameras at the lowest level. I have both set again to their highest standard resolution at 30 frames per second. I still have HDR enabled on the GoPro 13. So what are your thoughts on the image quality of these two cameras? What about stabilization? Are they both doing a good job in this situation? Okay, I have turned up the level of stabilization, and let's go for a run to see how they handle this. At the start of the comparison test, I mentioned that the mystery camera is one that I would expect the Hero 13 to outperform. And apart from that final test where we saw the Hero 13 struggle a little bit with the background and the stabilization test, I think it's fair to say that it just about edged out the mystery camera. But it's also worth mentioning that with a little bit of adjustment, particularly to the exposure of the mystery camera, I think the differences really would have been barely noticeable. And that is a bit of a problem because the mystery camera is the Hero 10, a camera that is 3 generations older than the Hero 13 and has a significantly smaller sensor. Now, unfortunately, I don't own a Hero 12, but I'm pretty sure that had I put the Hero 12 head-to-head against the Hero 13, you would have seen no difference whatsoever. So, the key question, of course, is the Hero 13 worth buying? Should you buy an alternative camera? Should you upgrade your Hero 12 to the Hero 13? Well, as to the question, should you buy the Hero 13 or should you buy a DJI or an Insta360? That's something I'm going to table for a future video when I do a direct comparison against those cameras. But I would say that if you own the Hero 12, the Hero 11, even a Hero 10 as you saw, I'm really not sure it's worth spending the money to upgrade to the Hero 13. And if it weren't for the fact that I'm running a YouTube channel testing cameras here, I certainly wouldn't have done so. So that wraps up my initial review of the GoPro Hero 13. As I mentioned, I plan on doing some follow-up reviews and comparisons against the key competitors, so be sure to subscribe and be on the lookout for those. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give us a like, and if you have any questions, any comments, if you have any suggestions for future videos, please drop those into the comments section. Otherwise, thank you for watching.